All right, so this is the interview of Mr. Tom, a paleontologist. Where are we right now,
We're
Mr.
at the
Tom?
San Diego Natural History Museum,
Awesome.
Balboa Park.
So, what is a paleontologist?
A paleontologist is a scientist who studies the history of life as preserved in the fossil record.
Specifically, like dead things or everything?
Well, objects that are preserved in the
Okay.
in the geologic record,
Okay.
in buried strata that document the history of the planet
Mhm.
in terms of the biological
Okay.
evolution.
Why did you choose this profession?
It just struck me as really interesting when I took a geology class in community college that the Earth has a history, and that with a little bit of knowledge you can go out and look at rocks and participate in understanding the history of the planet.
What do you like most about being a paleontologist?
Discovering fossils and asking them questions, so to speak. What was the world like that they lived in? What were the animals and plants that they lived with? How did they evolve, and why did they become extinct? All those kinds of questions.
What is the process that happens after locating a fossil?
Well, we want to determine if there are other fossils around that particular specimen, if they're part of an assemblage of fossils, or if it's just an isolated specimen. Then we try to determine. But sometimes we know it's a fossil. We don't know exactly what kind of fossil it is necessarily until we dig around it a little bit to expose its shape and size. And then we decide if we're going to collect it, and do we have the right equipment with us to collect that particular fossil. If we do, we excavate around it and remove it. Depending on how big it is or how small it is, it really depends on how long it takes to excavate it. Then we bring it back to the museum.
What is the coolest find from San Diego that in your opinion?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because all the fossils have some interesting story that's associated with them. So some of the more interesting fossils were that we've collected an armored dinosaur up in Carlsbad. So the partial skeleton of an armored dinosaur like a nodosaur related to ankylosaurs. About 70 million years old. Chula Vista, we've collected walruses that are really interesting. Walruses in Chula Vista, it doesn't really quite make sense, but they lived here because we found their remains. Giant bison at Qualcomm Stadium, the new Snapdragon Stadium, about 120,000 years old.
That's crazy. Do you think the researching of ancient fossils plays a large role for the future? For the future of San Diego?
Well, it helps us understand the history of this place that we live in on a local scale, but it also fits into a larger global view of how climates have changed over time, how biodiversity has changed over time, and maybe what factors have caused extinction or the evolution of new species or the dispersal of organisms from one part of the globe to another part of the globe. So it does provide us some context for understanding what the future might be like as we enter an uncertain future of increasing global warming.
So do you think your research on the fossils can help prevent other animals or other species from becoming extinct?
I don't think it can help prevent that extinction. It helps us understand how complex an extinction event can be. Which organisms go extinct first? Are they related to each other? In other words, is it a predator and prey relationship? When the prey species goes extinct, does the predator go extinct, or do they shift their selection of what they eat to something else? I don't know. But the fossil record can help inform that.
What's the oldest fossil that has been found in San Diego?
The oldest fossil are these small marine organisms extinct today called belemnites. It's a squid-like animal, about 140, 145 million years old, found in Penasquitos Canyon by the waterfalls there. Those are the oldest fossils we've found.
How do you find fossils in the canyons and stuff? Are you just looking for it, or does someone call in? Or
Well, so fossils are found in in sedimentary rocks like sandstones and shales and mudstones. So wherever those kinds of rocks are exposed, like in a canyon, the walls of a canyon, sea cliffs, the opportunity is there to look for and find fossil remains. So it's a matter of going out for a hike and examining the rocks closely and looking for clues that suggest that there's a fossil there.
Wow.
What's the most interesting fossil that has been found?
In your opinion?
Again, that's found here locally.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like asking who's my favorite grandchild, right? It's kind of hard to say. Or the most interesting grandchild. It depends on what day and what we found most recently.
Yeah.
I think the bison from Qualcomm Stadium is really bizarre. I mean, you think the horn cores on that thing have a span like this. And just imagine that animal living in Mission Valley, maybe 100,000 years ago, 120,000 years ago. That's just pretty interesting to me to imagine that. And we can say that occurred because we actually found its fossil. So there's no fake news there. It's the real thing. You can touch it. Yeah. And we collected it. So
have you had any hardships appeared when digging up a fossil, like it won't come out of the ground, or the city won't allow you to dig there or something like that? Does that ever happen?
Well, the majority of our fossils come from construction sites, like the Qualcomm Stadium excavation for Snapdragon.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a little time pressure. There's construction going on. They need to get in there, but we need to collect the fossil. So there's some time constraints, but we're used to digging with a little pressure on us.
Yeah.
But collecting a big fossil like that requires a couple of people and a few hours. I think it took us 2 days to collect that fossil.
Wow. What is your favorite thing about your profession?
Well, it's here at the museum. There's a nice mixture of academic research and science and the general public and education.
Yeah.
So as a paleontologist at the museum, I get to talk to visitors to the museum about what we found and explain. So they look at a fossil on display and they go, "Well, that's interesting. It's a bone, but what's the story behind it?" And there's so many stories. So I'd really enjoy that part of it.
How often is a fossil found in San Diego, would you say?
Well, at the museum, we have in our department, we have about 15, we have 15 staff members. Half of those are in the field almost every day on construction sites looking for fossils. So we it's in a way it's a business. We do this as part of the environmental review process, so that where construction is happening, like downtown, for instance, and they're digging a hole, deep hole for a parking structure. We'll be downtown on that site, following the progress of the grading. So we have people in the field every day of the week, and not that we find fossils every day, but certainly, usually every week we have some new fossil discovered.
How do you guys feel when you find a fossil?
Well, it's pretty exciting to realize that we're the first person to see that organic remains. If it's a bison or a whale or a walrus or a dinosaur, it's been buried for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and just seeing it's in the ground still in its natural habitat, so to speak, its geologic context. It's pretty exciting. And then you think, well, how did it get here? How did it die? What did it live with? All those questions kind of pop into your mind. So,
what would you say is the most unordinary fossil you have found? Interesting, why is it here? Or a lot of questions behind it.
Well, I mentioned that we found walruses in Chula Vista. The walrus that we found there is similar to the living walrus. It has big tusks and so forth. It's about the same size, but the only teeth that it has are its tusks. So that's a real puzzle. Yeah. And we found several specimens of the same walrus. And it turned out to be a species new to science. It was previously unknown until we found it.
Wow.
And the question is, why does it not have teeth except for tusks, right? And it's really an interesting puzzle.
Yeah. How much would a fossil cost today? Any sort of fossil, maybe that that whale fossil right there, how much would that cost? Does it have
We
a
don't
price?
we don't put a price monetary value on fossils. They have a scientific value, intellectual value, but I don't like to think of fossils having
Yeah.
a commercial value, but they do.
Would
But
they be
I don't want to think about it, right?
would they be expensive?
Well, it takes a lot of time. I mean,
Yeah.
it took that fossil there was part of a skeleton, and it took us several days probably to collect it. It took us probably several months to prepare it and clean it up and stabilize it. So if you just add up all the man hours, the person hours, it's that turns into money. But we don't think about the value of them.
All right, I think we have one more question.
Okay.
What is the most impactful fossil that has been found in San Diego, do you think?
Well, you have to define impactful. I think.
Like, impactful to the future or impactful to the museum? Like, I'm trying to put this in words, but like holds a lot of significance or like value behind it.
Well, I guess it really depends because fossils have different stories that they're telling us. So they tell us about evolution and extinction, about ecology and environments and so forth. So it depends on which of those values or those factors are impactful at the time. So I don't know. That's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Okay.
So thank you for your time.
Oh, sure.
We
Thanks for
enjoyed
your
this.
interest in the museum.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.